Okay, so this is on congruent triangles. It's actually 5.3 in this chapter. So you can just change that to a 5. 5-3, congruent triangles. And congruent, just remember that sometimes I use this symbol, congruent, instead of writing out congruent, but that means congruent. And congruent means the same shape and size. So when we talk about congruent polygons, what does that mean? It means polygons that have the same shape and size. Same shape and the same size. And then there is a quick example of what congruent versus non-congruent looks like. These shapes, they're in different orientations, but they're still congruent because they have the same dimensions, like all the sides are the same length, all the angles are the same. These shapes are congruent. These shapes over here, not congruent, obviously not the same size at all. And then these look like the same shape. They might be similar, but they aren't the same size, so therefore they aren't congruent either. So what we're going to be looking at is these triangles or polygons broken up into parts. Like if a triangle is congruent to another triangle, or if a polygon is congruent to another polygon, that means all the parts are the same length. So triangles are congruent if all the corresponding sides and all of the corresponding angles are congruent. And that's the big gist of this lesson, and I'll show you how to apply it. There is a theorem for this, and it's abbreviated, and write this down because this comes up actually a lot, CPCTC. And what this stands for is corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So we're going to write that down. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. CPCTC. And all that means is, okay, if you have two congruent triangles, then you could say that certain sides are the same length, angles are the same, and everything, and you could break it apart. Okay, so identify all the pairs of congruent corresponding parts, then write a congruent statement. So if these are congruent, it shows us the corresponding parts. As far as putting sides congruent to each other, for example, this segment right here, CB, would be equal to EF because it's the same length. So these are corresponding. So CB is the same length here as EF, and those segments are corresponding. Then I also noticed that AB, segment AB, is the same length as DF. So AB corresponds with DF. And then AC, this segment here, corresponds with EF, ED over here. So AC and ED. You could even color coordinate if you needed to, but... Okay, and then angles correspond as well. So in these two pictures, I'm looking for matching angles. So maybe angle A and D correspond. So angle A and angle D. And then I also have B and F are the same measure. So angle B corresponds with angle F, and they are the same measure. And then C and E are the same measure. Okay, so when we write a congruence statement for these triangles, we have to make sure that everything corresponds in that congruent statement. So we have triangle, and we'll just name this one ABC. And then when we write the statement for the second one, everything has to correspond. So if A is equal to angle D, then D has to go first. And if B is equal to F, then we would put F in here. And then if C is equal to E, we put E. And so everything has to be in the same order so it corresponds. So if I'm just looking at this congruent statement, I can say, okay, angle C is equal to angle E because of the way it's written. Or I could say that segment AB is equal to DF just because of the way it's written. And if I look at the picture, yeah, AB equals DF. Okay, so when we write congruent statements, the order of the letters in the names of the triangle is extremely important. Corresponding parts must be in the same order. Moving up to the top. Okay, so here it's saying, given this statement, finish the following congruent statements and mark the corresponding congruent sides and the corresponding congruent angles. For me, it's actually easier just to look at this congruent statement and fill in all the blanks. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to use pencil so I can kind of erase as I go. It says, given triangle JKL is congruent to COT, it's asking what's congruent to JK. Well, JK is those first two letters, so it must be congruent to segment CO. So we can say that JK is equal to CO. And then the next one says CT. CT is the first and the last letter, so therefore JL would be the congruent segment there. JL is equal to CT. And then KL is the last two letters, so that would be equal to segment OT. And then for angles, I'm going to do the same exact thing. Just looking at the congruent statement, it wants to know what's equal to J. Well, that would be angle C. What's equal to T? T is the last letter, so that would be equal to angle L. And then angle K, which is the middle letter, would be equal to angle O. So if I wanted to write this as a congruent statement, I would just have to make sure everything's in the same order. So if I wanted to start here with J in between the 1 and the 2, then I would have to start with the triangle in between the 1 and 2, which would be C. And then L is between the 2 dashes and the 3, so in between 2 and 3 would be T. And then last but not least, K, which is in between 1 and 3 dashes, so in between 1 and 3 dashes would be O. So I could write it like that too, as long as it corresponds. So this is correct, but so is this, as long as everything corresponds. Okay, B, write a congruent statement for the triangles below. Okay, so now they give us two triangles. They're saying they're congruent. They write out the first one, are okay, and we have to write out the triangle for this, and everything has to match. So angle R right here has 1 dash, so I'm looking for that over here, so that would be D. O has nothing on it, so that would be E. And K has 2 dashes, so that would be equal to M. And then for the next one, same thing, they put ZWB. So ZW is the 1 dash, so we could do, or you could do the angles too. Okay, this angle Z is in between the 1 and the 3. So in between 1 and 3 would be C. And then for W, it's in between 1 and 2, so then I would do P. And B is in between the 2 and the 3, so that would have to be S. Next. In the diagram, triangle XYZ is congruent to M and L. Okay, cool. Complete each statement. Something I might do before I even look at these is just like fill in all the angle measures. If these are congruent, then this would have to be 124. And then this angle over here would have to be, I don't know, I think it's 23. So 180 minus 124 minus 33 gives us 23. And then I can fill this in over here too, so I'm looking at it correctly. X is equal to m, so then m would have to be 33. This would have to be 23. It just makes it easier to match everything. Okay, so when you fill in these, you could either look at the picture or you could look at the congruent statement. I prefer looking at this. So measure of angle y would have to be equal to measure of angle n. Measure of m, the first letter would have to be equal to measure of angle x. Then we have yx here, which is those first two letters. That would have to be equal to mn or nm. It doesn't matter how you write them. Then yz, the last two would equal nl. And then they wrote two congruent statements here, and all you have to do is make sure things are matching to write this one. So L and M. So angle L, which is the 23 degrees, is equal to Z. N, which is the 124, is equal to Y. And M, 33, is equal to angle X. And then here, same thing, just matching Y equals N, X equals M, and Z equals L. And last but not least, find the measure of the missing angles in each pair of congruent triangles. Okay, if they're congruent, then all the angles are going to be the same. So here it fills in two of the angles, so filling in the third, or just do 180 minus 35 minus 88. That comes out to 57 degrees. So that would also be here. And then for the next one, this is 83, then this has to be 83. And if this is 42, then this is 42. We're just finding that last angle. So 180 minus 42 minus 83 equals 55. So that's our last angle there. And that's the gist of today's lesson. I am going to show you the homework really quick because there is a couple of questions that you might, I'll just explain it so you don't struggle with it. Okay, that's it